Dr. Dominique Reese here, president of Reese Financial Services, where I'm the chief financial coach, consultant, and strategist. And I wanted to tap in today. First, I am not feeling well at all. So I'm doing my best, but I'm struggling. I wanted to tap in today and talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the news, the bank failure with Silicon Valley Bank, as well as Signature Bank. I'm not sure if you knew that, but there was another bank that failed in New York, Signature Bank. And so, what I tend to reserve my thoughts until I don't know, like I had thought about this topic when I first learned of Silicon Valley Bank failing and in their liquidity crisis. Um, and everything in divine order. It feels appropriate to talk about it now. But my initial thoughts when I first learned about this was who was managing their risk and what went wrong. So, risk management is super important. Now, what is risk? Risk is the possibility of loss. And what is risk management? Well, it's just the act of managing your risk. It's the act of managing the possibility of loss. And so we could put this into many different frameworks where it's relatable. So I'll talk about it first from like an insurance perspective because insurance, life insurance, or really any insurance, is about risk. It's about the possibility of losing it all. So when you think about, let's say, life insurance, right? Life insurance is an income replacement tool. It's meant to replace your income in the event that you die. And your family is dependent on your income. They're dependent on you living this long life and providing and being able to afford all the things that come in one's life. But if you die, how are they going to make up that income? That's where insurance comes in. It is an income replacement tool. So we're managing the risk of you dying. That's the possibility of loss, right? The loss of a life. So we manage that risk of loss of life by purchasing insurance, life insurance. And that's how banks work. They pay into the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. They pay into that insurance to help manage their risk of loss. And in the event that there is a loss, that money is there to pay back the depositors who had their money in the bank. And that's what we're seeing right now. But there's another way of managing your risk that when I learned of the Silicon Valley Bank failure, I thought, uh-oh, something went wrong. There was some mismanagement. And remember, we're first managers, right? That's our role, is to manage. So when we think about what could have gone wrong and when did it go wrong and whose responsibility was it to sound the alarm or to make sure that this may not have happened, but everything in divine order, sometimes you can't prevent things from happening. They're gonna happen. So, all in all, it made me think about risk management on various levels of our economy, starting very, starting very micro, and then going macro. So, starting like at the household level, and then starting at your community level, and then at like a city level, and then state level or county, then state, then federal, right? So there's levels. But really, you could take a different perspective and just sort of think about it from an individual to um, who you are as an individual, a professional, a leader, an entrepreneur, business owner. Then we talk about investors. So if you're an investor, and then maybe you're a part of an investment club, then there's the banks, right? So again, levels. And you can identify yourself anywhere along those levels, right? You may be an individual, you may be a professional, you may be a small business owner with employees, or maybe a solopreneur. Wherever you are, however you identify, and no matter your income level, we all have risk to manage, especially financially. So just like this bank failed, I mean, you can have a failure financially. And I have three ways that you can begin to manage your risk. Now, again, if risk is the possibility of loss, you got to think about it from like, well, what's up for grabs, right? What can be lost financially? So maybe your source of income can be lost. Maybe your savings can be lost. Maybe your ability to work can be lost, right? Like if you think about it on every level, if you got to show up for work, then you need to protect your ability to show up for work. In showing up for work, that's how you make your income. So, how can you protect your source of income? In making the money that you work for, it comes into your bank account. How can you protect your bank account? You have money you're saving. How can you protect your savings? Like, again, all the levels, micro to macro, right? Small to big. And so that's what I want you to think about today. I want you to think about the ways that you're exposed. What is not protected? What are you not considering given what's going on in the world? Which is why, the other day I brought some perspective about what's happening in the world, not just what we see in front of us, because we're global citizens. Everything that happens in the world impacts us in one way or another. So you've got to think about this beyond yourself. So, how do you do that? How do you begin to manage your risk on every level and no matter your income level? The first thing is to be a consistent manager. Remember, we are managers and we've got to manage. Managing is an active activity. Excuse me, you've got to do things. You've got to be able to take a look at everything that's going on and assess it. See where it is compared to where it should be or compared to where it could be. And then think about what could impact that assessment from being its best. So, like in Silicon Valley Bank, when you think about it, like there were things that triggered one thing after another. So, interest rates are going up. Why? Because the Fed is trying to slow down the economy. Why? Because inflation is so high. Why? Because spending impacts inflation. So if we want to slow down the economy, we've got to, one way is to increase interest rates so that it costs more to borrow money. So if you are trying to buy a home or a car or anything where you need credit, it's going to cost you more. So they want to kind of pause all of that activity. They want to slow down the activities in the economy so that we can see the inflation rates come down. But there are many financial products that are linked to interest rates, like bonds, like the interest on our bank accounts, like our credit cards. So these things are also products that the banks invest in. And basically what happened with Silicon Valley Bank is that they had some bonds. They had some debt that once it once the interest rates were going up, the prices of those products went down. They have an inverse relationship. And once that got out, that news got out that this part of their portfolio was taking a hit, and then they issued shares to try to sell itself to get more money into the company, right? Because when you issue shares to the public, you're saying, hey, you can buy some shares from us. The money you give us will go towards our operations. That's basically what a share is, right? You buy a piece of a company, you give them money, they give you a portion of the company. And then they use that money to grow their operations or to shore up their books. So that's what was happening with Silicon Valley Bank. And essentially, once that got out, the depositors, meaning regular old people who are also have their money in a bank account. So Silicon Valley Bank wasn't just lending money to investors. They also are a bank. So you can go open a bank account with them and put your money in there. So as a depositor, you're seeing the news about what the company is doing and you're like, "Oh, I don't know if my money is safe. Let me go get my money out." And a whole lot of people did that at one time. And that's what we call a bank run or a run on the bank. When many depositors go to the bank to get their money out because they don't trust that their money is safe. And when that happened, that put Silicon Valley Bank in an even more dire position. Hence where we are now. So it's like everything in divine order, and sometimes the order isn't always a feel good thing. I'm not sure how much of that they could have prevented after the bank run. Like at that point, you can't control people from coming to pull their money out. And that really exacerbated everything else that they had going on. But where you think about what they could have done differently was simply managing all the monies that they had out there. I mean, they're making billions and billions of dollars of investments into tech corporations. Well, tech is a great investment. It has been for several years, but every good thing comes to an end. We don't have crystal balls, so we don't know when. And it's not necessarily like tech is doing so bad right now. Like we're in a tech proliferation, right? Many companies are just creating more and more innovative technology. So the opportunity to invest in them is there. But again, you got to think about all the things that could happen that's impacting your balance sheet, that's impacting how your money is invested. So, to that extent, maybe there was something Silicon Valley Bank could have done a little differently in reviewing their portfolio and looking at where their money is held and looking at how many companies they're truly invested in. Maybe they were spread too thin. Who knows? Like it's one thing to talk about it after the fact, right? We can talk about all the things they shoulda, coulda, woulda. But this is why this will be a lesson for everyone, not just banks, but even you, the individual consumer. This is an opportunity for you to look at your balance sheet, meaning your budget or your net worth statement, and for you to consider, where are you exposed? Where are you stretched too thin? What can you do better? That's what it means to be a consistent manager. You're consistently looking at what you've got and how you can manage it better, but that also means looking at where you're exposed. Maybe you should focus more on savings so you have more of a cushion. given interest rates are going up. Maybe you should spend less right now. Maybe you should cancel that vacation. Maybe like there are things you should think about because you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's coming. We don't have a crystal ball. So that leads me to the second thing that you can do to manage your risk, which is to have an economic outlook. Know what's going on in the economy. I understand that you may not be 100% interested in everything, but pay attention to the headlines. Again, if you just scan the headlines, that'll give you an idea of what's going on every day. And it'll make you a better manager because you kind of know what's going on. But have an economic outlook on the economy. You're a part of the economy. And if you don't want to just be subject to everything, then have position yourself such that you're able to have an outlook that can get you ahead of the game, right? I see this coming. I've read about this. It seems like this is in the news a lot. How does that impact what I got going? Let me get an outlook on the economy and how it's going to impact my household budget, my household net worth. Okay? So have an economic outlook, and there's Google, right? Google, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, uh, Tom uh, Reuters, Thomson Reuters, CNBC, although they could be a little slanted sometimes. Um, a, a Financial Times. There are reputable sources where you can get information, scanning headlines and understanding what's going on in the economy, which will then help you get an economic outlook on what's going on. And then there's plenty of us, people who are in the industry giving perspectives and thoughts about what's going on, just to help make sense of it. And that's always good too. So you can tap in. You could leave me a comment about a question that you might have, and I could do the research. So, or point you in the right direction, or give you something else to read. So, have an economic outlook, which essentially is like stay educated. Be a consistent manager and have an economic outlook, which means getting educated about what's going on. And then, the third thing you could do to manage your risk is to have a strategy and a plan. If you have a strategy and a plan, well, having a plan first and then implementing the strategies that are within that plan. When you have a plan and a strategy, you're not just out here reacting to everything. And ideally, your plan and your strategy account for the risk. Your plan and your strategy would account for what can go wrong. So you might see, like, okay, if I get laid off, which we are in an environment of layoffs, right? Depending on your industry, if you get laid off, how much money would you need to be able to just be cool for the next 6 months in case it takes you that long to get another job? What would that look like? Right? So maybe you got to cut back on some things just to shore up your savings and get to that 6 month savings goal in the event that you don't have a job anymore or you get hurt and can't work, right? And for those of us who are entrepreneurs, having things like AFLAC, and I'm not a part of them, but I'm saying like where if you get hurt, you get paid. Having a disability insurance plan. You got to think about these kinds of things. So, what is your plan and what are the strategies that you're implementing within that plan so that you've got to focus? So, no matter what's going on in the economy, follow your plan, follow your strategies. And if you need to tweak the strategies according to what's going on, you can do that within the context of your plan. But if you don't even have a plan and you're just living day to day, you don't have no goals you're working towards, you don't have anything you're pushing towards that you desire, then you're just going to be reacting. You're going to find yourself in a very reactionary space. You're going to feel like life is happening to you. You're going to feel subject to everything versus you having some kind of agency and being able to say, well, according to my plan, I'm only this far away from achieving that goal. If this happens, then I'll do this. Now it's a different language. And your foundation doesn't necessarily have to be rocked in the event that all things are going to hell in a handbasket, right? So this is a time to be quite strategic about how you're exposed and what you're exposed to. Let's focus on our risk management at all the levels. Okay? All right, that's all I can do. I'm not feeling so good. So, let me know if you have any questions about what I've shared. If you need help making more sense of it and how it might apply to you and your financial situation. But we all have risk to manage, all of us. So look at the areas where you may be exposed and begin to build strategy on how you can eliminate those exposures and minimize your risk. Okay? All right, Dr. Dominique, talk to you soon. Peace.